The Hacks of Gorm, Part 36, To Claim the Torrent Sword. Long ago, the time of the ancients ended. Theirs was an amazing world, full of magical device that defied all belief. It is said that they could even communicate at great distances with only the touch of a button, and that they sped along in chariots of metal, both upon the ground and through the sky. That world ended when the lights went out. But the survivors cried out in the night. Who would give them conversation when they had forgotten how to speak to their neighbor? Who would give them entertainment now that the glowing images were no longer lit? Who would give them love and guidance after a time where most had only found such through watching a box or listening to a cube? One did hear, and it answered, and even though it had itself lost most of its earthly power with the end of the ancient world, it knew it was time to go beyond. It had ruled the close of that world, happily monitoring every finger tap, every button press, to both fill its bloated coffers and to suppress any who might defy the power of its equalitarian masters. Like some undead thing, it arose again, but this time it came back more warped and potent than before. Like a ghoul it reanimated. Though being a former thinking machine, it dropped the O and repeated itself, as such things are wont to do, ironically sounding much like its name before. A demon lord now, it rules from its dimension of fell interwebs and would promise succor to those who would seek communication, joy and love at a distance, in pantomime of how the fallen ancients once did centuries past. And, like then, there was only one way to cut through its power. "Me hope we take Torrent Sword soon, Gottschalk. Phantom in head getting impatient." Gottschalk turned to Gorm and began to reply, but then he stopped. A corpse lay before them, and its face had been chewed off. Sir Jave strode up, not aware of the corpse yet. "This place is most likely trapped. Who knows what sort of dastardly—" Even Sir Jave was at a loss for words. He turned to the side of the passage and vomited. Tamara came up next and nodded, ignoring both her sickened friend and the mutilated body. Across the room, past the mutilated corpse, the Torrent Sword was visible on a stand upon a dais. A long, sharp blade, it had a wide hilt of gold. Even more striking, coruscating spirals of energy swirled around it, its magic clearly visible here far below ground. "It must be well protected indeed," she said finally. Gorm and Gottschalk knew that women often had a magical touch, so they took Tamara's cautions seriously. Suddenly they spotted movement across the room and got their weapons ready. Something was coming at them fast, some sort of four-legged beast. Gorm pulled his great axe back, ready to strike, but Tamara put her hand on his mighty shoulder. It was only a hound, though its eyes looked wild and its face bloody. "Aw, Pooch," she said sweetly. Gottschalk wasn't so sure. There seemed to be something very off about the beast, apart from the blood and wild eyes. "Come here!" exclaimed Tamara. The hound barked and ran to her. The men let out a sigh of relief when it didn't bite, but then felt disgust when it licked her with its bloody face. Gottschalk's eyes went to the corpse on the floor again. It had been that of a man dressed in starified robes and hat, obvious marks of a wizard. He then turned to the hound and saw it had a matching collar. Tamara?" Gottschalk was beginning to guess what had happened to the dead man. "Yes?" Tamara's face looked strange. Some of the blood from the dog had transferred to hers. Gorm readied his axe to strike Tamara now. Perhaps she had also gotten an evil spirit inside her that needed to be released the barbarian way. Gottschalk frowned, realizing that things were beginning to deteriorate. Sir Jave had only now stopped vomiting. It seemed a long time for even him. It was only a corpse with its face chewed off, after all. Both Tamara and the dog had also started to growl at Gorm. The barbarian's eyes glazed as their great spence began to take over. Perhaps there was some sort of spell that warded this place. making all of his companions mad, or at least madder than usual? So he strode up and reached for the Torrent Sword, even if doing so would kill him. It seemed a better fate than doing nothing. Next week, The Hacks of Gorm, Part 37.